Okay, noting the time and the presence of a quorum, I will call this meeting of the Board of Selectmen to order. Are there any citizens' concerns regarding any items not otherwise on our agenda? You've got a citizen concern? Okay.
I was wondering, I'm putting on my transportation resident hat.
Sure.
We just submitted, Crosstown Connect just today submitted 2 grant applications to MassDOT, and I was wondering if we could write a letter of support. Doug Halley wrote a sample letter of support that communities or businesses could, or organizations could write. And so it occurred to me, even though it's sort of Acton writing a letter of support for its own application, because it is the combined association of many towns and businesses, it wouldn't hurt to have a letter.
Why don't you send it to Steve, Lisa, and I, and we can see about putting it on our next agenda to do it. We can't. I'm not going to write a letter that we haven't seen.
Right. Okay.
That work?
Yeah, I'm not sure the timing will work, but which is why I wanted to bring it up. He just sent out the sample and the grants on Friday.
Yeah, check that out. We can talk about it.
I will do it as fast as we can.
Okay, perfect.
Thanks.
Okay, any other citizens' concerns? Great. All right. Chairman's update, just a reminder for everybody that the Massachusetts presidential primary is coming up on Tuesday, March 1st, and so there'll be voting at Conan and the junior high school, so make sure you get out to vote. And the Legal Win Voters Civics Bee is on Sunday, March 13th starting at 1 in Town Hall, and I believe they're still looking for adult participants to pair with. They get student teams of 3 and then pair the adults with them. A couple of us have participated in past years, and I think everybody would agree that it's a lot of fun, although the questions are pretty hard, so I would recommend studying up. But if you're interested in that, I think there's information on their website, or you can email and we can connect you with the right people at the league. And then, as another reminder, we are having a special Board of Selectmen meeting on April 11th, and that will be to deal with the rescheduled hearing on the Concord's proposal for the special site plan special permit for the Nagog water treatment plant. So that will be, again, a special meeting on April 11th. And I believe that is it for me, Mr. Manager.
No report.
Okay, excellent. All right, it's a little before 7:10. Peter, do you want to talk about the Green Advisory Board charge restructure? It'll take like 5 minutes.
Sure. I've been the liaison for 2 years to the Green Advisory Board, and they inquired, and I encouraged them to broaden their charge to address general environmental and sustainability issues in town rather than just energy savings, which their old charge was based on. So we now have their proposed new charge here. The Green Advisory Board serves as an advisory committee reporting to the Board of Selectmen and the regional school committees. The GAB, it consists of 5 members, 2 associate members. Each member serves a 3-year term, and terms are staggered. The GAB advises the town and schools on issues relating to environmental sustainability. It also may assist town departments, other volunteer committees when invited, as Acton conserves resources, reduces waste, improves energy efficiency, and plans more sustainable land use. The GAB supports the towns and schools' participation in the Green Communities Grant Program and helps prioritize energy reduction and renewable energy projects within the town and schools. They've mostly been involved in the past in making proposals to Steve Ledoux, the town manager, for expending the the Green Communities Grant that we get from the state in energy savings in the schools and the town buildings, street lights in town being replaced with LEDs to save energy, lots of energy savings in the schools. They have a lot of talent on that board in terms of environmental scientists, so I felt it would be appropriate for the town to have an official town board that would advise it on all kinds of environmental issues and not just energy savings. I ran it by Jim Snyder Grant of Green Acton. They're their areas of expertise would overlap, but again, I think it would be a good idea to have an official town board, and we still listen to Green Advisory Board, or Green Acton, I'm sorry, we still would listen to Green Acton in terms of their ideas about energy savings and other environmental issues, but this board would also be involved in advising the town about similar issues. So I did run it by Jim Snyder Grant. He's excited about it. He thinks it's a great idea, so that's my proposal.
Questions, Janet?
So is the part that's added, the sort of the second sentence about conserving resources, reducing waste, improving energy efficiency, and planning more sustainable land use? Because I know they've been working on energy efficiency stuff, and I assume the last sentence is pretty much capturing what they've been doing, and that I'm just wondering how it's changed. That's all. I mean, I understand you're expanding.
Yeah, that in the first sentence also, I think, on issues relating to environmental sustainability. Right. Yeah.
Okay.
It was pretty much limited to
Yep.
just the energy reduction and renewable energy projects.
Sounds good. Thanks.
Franny?
Oh, well, it's just a comment. I think this is about time. I think it always seemed a little odd to me that we had a citizens group that was generally looking at environmental issues, but then a more specifically focused GAB. So I think it's a good idea. I think that looking at public transportation as a way of saving energy and helping the environment is included in here. I mean, it's sort of, you know, I don't.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, at first they were drafting something that was very specific about water resources and air quality, and I said, well, you got the expertise, why don't you just make it very broad and all kinds of issues? Yeah, I think, transportation, public transportation is certainly an environmental issue, absolutely.
I mean, specifically air quality and people idling at schools is one way that, one area that I think could be looked at, so thanks.
Okay. Well, thank you for running it by Green Acton. I just want to make sure we weren't, stealing their thunder, but I do think it is a good idea to have an official board, as Franny said, looking at these issues as well. Okay, do you want a vote on their new charge, or was it just more of a...
I think we're the ones that charged them, so I would say we should vote on it, yeah.
Move to approve the amended charge.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, now it is 7:10, so I will read the hearing notice. The Acton Board of, I have one that says 7:35. Okay, thank you. The Acton Board of Selectmen will hold a public hearing, it's continued to February 22nd, 2016 at 7:10 p.m. in the Francis Faulkner Hearing Room 204 at Town Hall on the application of Acton Management Inc., 69 Great Road, Acton, under the Acton zoning bylaw 10.4 for a site plan special permit number 11/06/15-458, proposed development of 4 single-family dwellings with associated private drive at 267 Great Road. The application and accompanying plans can be inspected at Town Hall during normal business hours. Okay. Once you guys are set up, if you'd like to just introduce yourselves. Go ahead. Yep, just turn on and...
Thank you. May it please the board, too loud. I'm Steve Steinberg, the applicant for this proposal. With me is George and TJ from Stamskin McNary, my son Randy. This property is located at 267 Great Road. A couple years ago, I think, we received a permit to build an office building at the front of the property, which is now complete and occupied by Eckel, Morgan & O'Connor, a law firm that's been in business in Acton for many years. Now we're before you to build 4 homes in the back part of the property. This is a commercially zoned lot. This is a permitted use for up to 4 homes with a business use. So there's no variance or special exception required for this. I do want to emphasize that this property is not part of the Meadows development. It's completely separate. None of the facilities in the Meadows will be shared with these 4 homes, except, maybe you can point it out, except that these 4 homes will use the very end of Gabriel Lane to go to Great Road and to come into the property. Other than that, this is completely separate. And the easement for this access was legally put in place long before the Meadows was ever developed. The history so far of this project is we've obtained an order of conditions from the Acton Conservation Commission, and as part of that process, we agreed to reduce the size of the first home and to move it so that it does not infringe on the buffer zones per the Conservation Commission's suggestions. We've also secured a septic permit from the Acton Board of Health and a curb cut from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. George has responded to the comments of the town and the departments, and I believe we've met their concerns where feasible, and that's the great majority of those comments and concerns. Now, I notice a few of the people who live in the Meadows are here tonight, and they may want to speak with you. The Meadows, I think, is a very successful project, and I think the people who live there are very happy. And I myself take a lot of satisfaction when I see the children on the playgrounds, and the people are very happy. It sold very quickly. I think their concerns, if I may say, is that this would add somewhat to the congestion in the project. It is only 4 more homes. The planning department has given us their opinion that the increase or impact will be minimal, and the traffic will not be negatively affected. I myself would never do anything on this property that would be bad for what I've already done. At one time, there could have been multiple apartments there coming and going. I felt it was inappropriate and not compatible, and I took what I thought was the best approach by building only 4 homes there. It is business zoned. However, the property is unusually shaped so that the part where the homes are going cannot be seen from Route 2A, so it would not be appropriate for business. So this use of combining some homes with the office building, I think, is exactly what the commercial zoning intended, and that's what we did, and I think the impact would be absolutely minimal on the Meadows. We certainly would be willing to install proper signage on the new road, such as a stop sign or no left turn, a stop line, or whatever the board felt was important. Also, I do realize that these 4 homes will be using a short area of Gabriel Road, and we're certainly willing to participate in the maintenance and snow plowing of that short area. So I think that's about it. George is here, and if you have any questions, there is one thing. We wanted to anticipate the actual amount of traffic on this road to make sure that the concerns of impact were not correct. So we took a survey of the traffic on the Meadows driveway for 8 hours during the day on a school week when kids were coming and going. And I'll pass this out to the selectmen. Can you sort of pass them on? And it shows almost no traffic, maybe sometimes 1 or 2 cars per hour. And sometimes we also counted the number of times cars cross each other, pass by each other. It's almost minimal, maybe a few times during an entire day. Now, one of the things is that some of the people at the Meadows like to get in their car and go down and wait for the school bus so they can put their kids in the car. And then they stack up 2 or 3 cars at a time. Now, to get back out and go back up to where they live, right now, they have to go back onto Route 2A, circle around in some parking lot, and come back in. Or they turn around in Mr. Begg's driveway by backing in. I did want to point out that this would actually help their situation, because they could wait on this new short driveway for the school bus and then continue on their way back to their homes at the end of the meadows without the necessity of going on to Route 2A, which is not a great idea. So in actuality, I think it would, to some extent, help the situation. Thanks. What's that? Yeah, ask whatever they make you do.
Would you like me to orient you to the plans briefly?
I would, if you could just give an overview, please.
Peter, would you like me to go next, or you want to go next?
Well, I think probably, George, it's fine for you to introduce this.
Again, George Democrakis from Stamsky and McNary, and let me orient you to the neighborhood a little bit first. This is Gabriel Lane that serves Acton Meadows, which Steve referred to just a moment ago. This is the new office building that's built and occupied by the legal firm. On one side here is Makaha. On the other side is Bank of America and the Monsoon Restaurant. So the new driveway will extend from Gabriel Lane into the property for our 4 new houses here. Here we're just blowing up the scale a little bit. Again, Gabriel Lane is here, and the new driveway comes in like this, and 4 detached single-family houses. This is number 1 was reduced in size after input from especially the Conservation Commission with respect to the buffer zone to the isolated wetland that was on the property. There's a turnaround at the end of this. We met with the fire department and they were satisfied with the maneuverability on the road. As Steve said, very low intensity trip generation from a traffic perspective. And naturally the plans that the board got also include a landscape plan that has a number of plantings that we've identified here, consistent with local native plantings that we like to see. The engineering department did review the plans twice, and they've issued another memo saying that they were satisfied with our calculations. So from a technical standpoint, between the engineering department's review, the Board of Health's issuance of a permit, and the Conservation Commission's issuance of a permit, we seem to have satisfied the technical requirements, not to mention zoning, of course. But Kristen may want to address some minor issues on that front.
I have a couple of questions. You mentioned a curb cut. Was that for the office building? I mean, you didn't need a new curb cut to build these houses.
Exactly. You're correct. There's no new curb cut required. Okay. We have 2 curb cuts approved by Mass DOT, one for the office building, one for Meadows, of course.
Okay. And then you mentioned snow plowing. I thought I heard, Steve, you say that the residents of, is it Sylvia Place or Sylvia Lane, would be willing to help with the snow plowing, or what's the legal requirement? Neither of these are only 20 feet wide, right? So neither of these are going to be public roads. They're all going to be private ways. So who's required to maintain that lower legally?
Legally, the Meadows condominium is required to maintain the entire Gabriel Lane.
Okay.
But clearly, since our new 4 homes are going to use the tip end of that, we would feel perfectly okay with obligating ourselves to participate in that section in maintaining it, repairing it, snow plowing it.
When you say we, you talk about the homeowners.
Well, it's, there are no homeowners yet.
Right, okay.
I would be willing to have that in the decision
Oh, okay.
and make it part of the condominium documents.
And change the legal documents to require that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
I saw something in the staff comments, I think it was Design Review Board, about plantings within the, I don't know if it was the 100-foot setback or the 75-foot setback. Where are those?
In this, well, this is the 100-foot setback here, so all of these plantings are within the 100-foot, and naturally the Conservation Commission reviewed the plantings.
Yeah, and that's allowed within the 75?
It is.
Yeah, right, okay.
The fact of the matter on this property, as you'll know for sure, is it's a pre-existing non-conforming situation where there's sort of a garage structure only several feet from the wetland. The lawn extends just about down to the wetland, so we are actually improving that considerably.
So it was previously disturbed, and you're actually moving it back from, I don't know what this wetlands looks like. It was described as, I mean, is it a normal wetlands, or is it it's just kind of a seasonal thing?
It's an isolated local wetland only, compromised significantly. Part of it was actually on the adjacent property, and some time ago, Steve offered to clean up quite a bit of refuse that was in there at his own expense and with the permission of the neighboring landowner, and that improved it dramatically. So it has done nothing but improve since Steve's been working here.
I mean, my review of this with the planning staff and review of the staff comments indicates they met all the requirements. There were some issues about a 10-foot landscape buffer between the commercial site and the houses. They revised the plans to meet that requirement. It is in a limited business district, which allows this. You know, the Design Review Board had real issues with this. They don't like the design of smushing these houses together. We're understanding from previous submittals and other projects that that's what people are looking for. In fact, I think Gabriel Lane is pretty much designed that way. The additional issue on this site is wetlands on one side, and on the left, wasn't there some setback requirement from the left side of the property too? So
The Zone 2 of the town's public water supply restricts that area.
Requires open space. I mean, even though the houses are smushed together in terms of the actual area covered by the new construction and the pavement, it doesn't exceed what would normally be allowed under normal zoning anyway. There's enough open space around it to meet all the requirements. So, I mean, I frankly agree with the Design Review Board, but it meets zoning requirements. So I don't see an issue with this particular project.
Questions? Franny? I'll go.
I just wanted to clarify, how many of the houses on Gabriel Lane are affordable?
7.
Out of how many? How many do you,
I'm sorry?
How many units are there altogether?
26.
Oh, okay. And are any of these affordable?
No, these are not affordable.
Okay, and a resident of Great Road called me and with some concerns, and one of them was, he thought he had heard that some of the houses on Gabriel Lane didn't sell well, the full price ones, and that, is that true? Or?
They sold so well that I should have raised the prices, but they sold so quickly I didn't have the opportunity.
So, okay, so it was planned from the beginning, 7 out of 26, so I don't know where he got that. Because he was concerned that we were allowing more houses to be built that wouldn't sell. well, but so it sounds like there is a demand for
All
housing.
4 of these homes are reserved.
So-
Not under agreement, but we've taken deposits on all of them.
Oh, okay. And there were concerns, I was surprised to hear, I mean, I guess I haven't really counted crosswalks. There's actually not a crosswalk along there?
I'll take a crack at it. There is not, but actually, as part of the Meadows approval by the Board of Appeals, Steve was required to participate in designing a crosswalk at this location, which he had us do, and we've submitted to engineering, and I believe they're working in concert with Mass DOT to try and get that approved.
Is there any chance of a cross light with the crosswalk?
I think that's
From
highly
Mass DOT?
unlikely. Highly unlikely, I would think.
How many deaths do they require before?
It's a challenge to get Mass DOT to approve mid-block crossings at all.
Even if it was at Brooks, it seems like it would be.
It seems
better
like
than-
they're open to several crossings, but I think your own engineering department will have a lot more information on that because they've been working, trying to get some answers there.
Okay. He was also concerned about just wondering if there's a way we could limit development like this. And I said, you know, it's within the bylaw. If it's within the bylaw, we have to do it. And one question was about some 2/3 rule about the number of trees that are cut from a land. Are you familiar with this?
Yes, I agree. With respect to, there are limits on the property, and it's a floor area ratio limitation. So it is limited and structured in the zoning to only be so dense, and we're certainly not exceeding that. We couldn't. Peter alluded to the northerly end of the property here, and some here. And there are certain open space requirements in the zoning that we have to meet, undisturbed open space, it's called.
And they're met.
Yes.
And there were just concerns about water and gas lines, and in general, just about too much development along there, and traffic. But my own thought was, and I think I remember meeting with Steve on the land before, when you were talking about Gabriel Lane, and I had mentioned at the time, it would be nice to have some kind of pedestrian access so people have some kind of connection between the neighborhoods. Did you look at the end and where you connect to other neighborhoods or other developments, including the commercial? Is there a way you could have some kind of pedestrian paths that made so people could loop and people could get to other places without going down to 2A?
Good point. At the very end of our new road, although we're not allowed to do, can you point to that, George? No,
You're talking about Meadows up here?
We keep on to the left,
yeah.
yeah, right there. Although we're not allowed to clear that entirely, it's very easy to make a natural path that would let people go to Willow Bookstore, Bank of America, and the sidewalk without going down there. That I could do. It can't be paved or anything, but it could be a natural path through the woods.
Could it be flat enough that it could be
It really
accessible?
already exists. One would only have to clear away the dead branches and stuff.
Is there a way we could put that in that would
I think you could have a condition along those lines, and so long as, I think you would perhaps qualify it that it met all required rules, you know, just so that we don't find an obstacle that prevents us from doing it. Mm-hmm. And, of course, the landowner, if there's a stone wall in the way, may object to moving the stone wall. So you would need agreement from the landowner. So subject to those two qualifiers with the landowner's permission, abutter's permission, and that we meet applicable regulations.
It just seems, is there a sidewalk along the main road?
There is. The bottom line is that you can walk out to Gray Road and get
Okay, but it's always nice for people, and Gabriel Lane, to be able to take...
Oh, it's an excellent idea. It's just the different property owners, so you have to get them
Right.
all to cooperate.
Yes, okay. Thanks. Jerry?
Yeah, I would reiterate what has already been said about the houses being squished together, but I think the aerial view is helpful, and I know from the previous project that you brought before us, or George brought before us, that these houses do sell. I also assume, are you going to be aiming to preserve the trees that right now are kind of buffering the development from the back of the commercial, the little commercial strip, and then also behind the houses? Because, you know, the decks are going to be in the back of the houses, and it'd be nice if the people sat on the decks and didn't look out on, I don't know what's behind there. Is that just a lot of woods? Is that under your control, or is that somebody else's control? Where's the boundary of the property behind those houses? Do you know?
So the two questions were...
Yeah, I tend to have run-on questions and comments and observations because I'm thinking out loud, but...
there are a series of trees on the commercial property that we wouldn't be touching as part of this anyway. The property boundary is here. Similarly, in the back, the property boundary is here. This wooded area is actually a portion of the Willow Books lot. So we do not have the ability to affect those trees whether or not we want to.
Okay.
So on both sides, there are trees that we don't have access to.
Are those, because I know when I was walking, when you were putting up the meadows and we were doing site walks, I know that there was an area that I think it's for septic system for Lady Slipper Lane properties with this very long swaths of land that extend out. And I think it was on that parcel where I went onto the property. I wasn't supposed to, but I went onto it and I realized that it had these raised concrete structures and that didn't look very well maintained. I thought kids could go and horse around with them and they ought to lock them, but I assume that that's what that is. That whole swath of land has to do with, or a good part of it has to do with.
It's at least, you know, this far back and further up.
Okay, okay. But then, okay.
Could I supplement that for a second?
Sure.
The pictures, ma'am, that I just distributed, those show the trees in front of the road. You want to point those out, George? In front of the new road? Yeah. Which happens to be my property also. Okay. And we planted those pine trees 20, 30 years ago.
Okay.
And they're pretty good. And naturally, we'll supplement them. The fence probably should be replaced, depending on what the residents want. But that's a nice tree line. They're mature. They're probably 50 feet high already. To the rear of the property, it's highly unlikely that that could ever be developed. Because as you know, with this commercial zoning, there's a maximum number of parking spaces that a property can have. And that's why if you ever went behind Willow Bookstore, you'd see a big unused parking lot. Because there cannot be any more parking here. So it's very, very unlikely that that would ever be developed back there.
Okay, yeah, and when pine trees are big, it's better if they're sort of left intact, because of course if you start destabilizing one, then they all tend to sort of suffer, and they have shallow roots, so they tend to get very unstable pretty easily. So it may be good if you could supplement them with some other evergreens or something, just that would be more durable. But I'll leave that to you. I did see that Conservation did approve the plantings within their jurisdiction. I mean, it is 75 foot is the limit of where they want building, and that doesn't pertain to plantings. And then 50 foot is 50 foot in is where they like to have naturalized vegetation. As you said, George, you're improving the conditions there. How much smaller is the house? How big are the three houses that are the original size, and then how much smaller is the smaller house?
The bigger houses are approximately 3,000 square feet of living area. The smaller house is 2,000.
Okay, and you said that you're going to have a some sort of homeowners association. Is it going to be combined with the business building? Is that going to be joint kind of property owners association?
The whole property will be one condominium. Okay. And the front building will be one unit, and then the four houses will be 4 units. Okay.
All right. And I know that DRB did basically like, I guess, the plantings insofar as they were proposed. I think they did express a concern about the possibility of fertilization of plantings that were sort of close to the Conservation Commission's jurisdiction. But I assume that you address that with the planting plan that Conservation has already approved. And do you have any plans for irrigation with regard to all the other plantings that you're proposing? I don't know what exactly you're proposing. Are you proposing shrubs, or are you proposing trees, or? those big circles that you
Yes.
show.
A mix of things that you're going to do.
Want to show that landscape?
Yeah, you talked to
Well, when we, as part of the application, we submitted to you a landscape plan that we will implement with extensive plantings.
Irrigation-wise, would just be the lawn areas.
There'll be very limited lawn areas, mostly in the back of the property.
Okay, okay. Yeah, I don't remember seeing the planting plan, but, yeah, but that's fine. It's not important for me to look at that, so, okay, thank you.
Sure.
I just have one other question. Are you on Concord water here?
No. Well, that's a very interesting question. The original house, which you want to point out where it is, the yellow house, yeah, that was on Concord water. This is a very touchy thing right now. They will not allow you to expand their use, and they were very difficult, and we terminated the water service. It's on Acton water. You may have an existing line, but they won't allow you to have any more. Very difficult.
Okay, thank you. You know, obviously, I think I'm always shocked about the density that people are willing or want to live in, but, you know, from talking to you guys and from the last, you were in here 2 weeks ago with the one further down on Great Road, it sounds like people, you know, want these houses, and that's not really for me to say. And I do think that, you know, considering the meadows nearby, it sort of fits in density-wise with those, so I don't think it's some sort of drastic change in this area, so I'm not overly concerned with it in any way, and as you noted, it fits in with the zoning. And then my one question, I just wanted to clarify, it sounded like, because I thought I read in the planning comments from the revised drawings that the 10-foot landscaping buffer didn't go all the way around the building, but it sounds like maybe that has been resolved, or no?
This is the spot we're talking about, and we did discuss it, and we can meet that requirement, and
Okay.
I think if you simply condition that
Sure.
we alter the plan to meet the requirement, will be okay.
Okay, and so I just want to clarify with Kristen, that was, from my understanding, the only outstanding issue from your perspective?
Yep, as you've been discussing, this is a combined business and dwelling use, which is allowed by right, so it's just a site plan that we're looking at. And the only piece that does not comply with zoning at this point is that 10-foot buffer extending around the parking lot. That was the previously approved portion of the site plan.
Okay.
And so it just needs to be amended, which there's enough area and can be easily accommodated.
Okay, excellent. I think that's it for me. Any other questions? Franny?
Clarification on that sidewalk thing. Is that Briarbrook, or what is it that's over to the left? Yeah.
Willow Books.
Oh, that's over there. That's, I was thinking it was below. Oh, so to the left goes to
Up
below?
in the front is Bank of America Monsoon Restaurant.
Oh, okay. So you could, that sidewalk that you could, and I know you said you couldn't pave it because
Right.
because you're not allowed, or?
As you were saying that, I was looking in the bylaw, and do you see the portion where there's that the hatched lines? Mm-hmm. So this particular parcel is partially in Zone 2 Groundwater Protection District, and that's a recharge protection area. And so 40% of a particular area has to be undisturbed open space, and that means that you can't clear, you can't grade, but you can clear dead trees, and you can, mow and grass or brush yearly. So there would probably just be a matter of how you want to word that, if you wanted to include that into a decision, but it would not be able to be paved.
Okay, but you could clear, and it would go to Willow Books. Nothing. Okay. And does Willow Books connect to the Briarbrook neighborhood? Well,
I don't think so.
Okay. Anyway, I don't see a reason not to approve this, but I would love to include.
Are you proposing something paved?
No,
no. Okay,
not,
as long as it's not
because
paved, because
like
if that's Zone 2, it'd be better not to have, just have it let naturalize.
Not paved, but as flat as possible, so that it was as accessible as possible, but removing as few trees as possible too. Sometimes it takes a little curvy shovel work.
Are there any questions or comments from the audience? Sure, so if you can just come on up and turn on the microphone and just say your name and address, please.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Sure. Yeah, my name is Amit Kalra, and I am a resident at 17 Gabriel Lane in Acton Meadows. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. As I speak here, I speak on behalf of many other residents at Acton Meadows who couldn't make it. We've actually been, working with Steve, Mr. Steinberg, on a couple of items where I think residents in particular had concerns. I'm glad to hear that Steve has taken care of some of them, especially one regarding putting a stop sign. I think that'll make that entrance safer. And also the second one where I think he mentioned that we still need to work through mutually agreeable and a fair, some sort of a plan where the residents of the 4 houses could pay towards the maintenance and plowing. There are 2 other aspects which have repeatedly been, I've been hearing in particular from other residents. One of them being, there is one concern that the narrow stretch of Gabriel Lane, especially in the initial part, the part of the reason why residents have felt it is a bit congested is, it's really not very wide. So even now, when there are 2 cars, when they, try to cross side by side, people have to go really very carefully. And with 4 more houses coming in, some people turning in, there's a concern that if that stretch could be widened a bit, I'm not even sure if it's possible, but if that area could be widened from one side, and I'm specifically talking about the area which is between, if I may, represent, I think it's probably the initial stretch where we have the post mailbox and, the bus stand on one side. And then we have a wooden side rail on the other. There is, I think, small area of, for walking. But if we could get a bit more width over there, I think it would help the residents a lot in terms of feeling a bit more comfortable with that stretch. So that is one area that we wanted to highlight. And the second being, especially the 2 houses which are right very close to the Great Road, one which is Mr. Begg's, property, and also number 3, they both have raised a concern that with the road coming into Gabriel Lane, they are a little concerned that if the flow of water coming in from that road onto Gabriel Lane becomes very heavy, especially in a heavy downpour, there is some history on one of the houses where they've had trouble in the past. So we are very interested to know if there's something that could be done to divert the flow of water in a way that it doesn't flow over the Gabriel Lane and into the houses, but somehow takes a different route. So those 2 things that I specifically mentioned, one around widening of Gabriel Lane if possible, and managing the water flow in a way that it doesn't really cause any sort of a concern to anyone, I think those are 2 things that we would really appreciate if Mr. Steinberg could look into. Again, if there's anybody else, if I'm missing something, please feel free to add. But those were 2 things that I wanted to call out. And again, thank you to Mr. Steinberg for, addressing the stop sign, and we look forward to working with him on a mutually agreeable plan.
Would you guys like to respond about if it's possible to widen the road and with regard to the water runoff?
The water one is a little easier to respond to. There are 2 catch basins that we've proposed at the end of the new driveway. So it will be capturing the water. That'll be a crowned road. And then Gabriel Lane has a crown in it itself. So we've proposed drainage to capture all of that water coming from the new road. I think that's pretty straightforward. The widening is quite a bit more complicated. For one thing, just the whole permitting process was entirely separate from this board. That was a 40B with the Board of Appeals. It's a comprehensive permit. Even if, let's say you wanted to condition it, I don't think you necessarily could affect that permit since it's with a different board, but it would be quite a bit of work and expense at this stage to do that. So just the other thing is the state has certain limitations on the width of the opening at Great Road, and the road is under the purview of the state. So we have the state permitting process for the curb cut with limitations, the comprehensive permit for Meadows, just from a permitting perspective, making it complicated, not to mention the effort that it would actually take. But Mr. Steinberg did talk to me about that, and it's at this stage of the game pretty onerous on him to affect that change.
Besides the permitting issues and the cost issues, is it possible to do it?
It's physically possible. But again, that too is in this zone 2 of the to add another layer of complication. That zone 2 line cuts across there, so now we're adding impervious to theirs. So I'm not even sure about the numbers there. But just again, from a physically, just about anything's possible. It's a little hornet's nest otherwise.
Okay. In terms of the stormwater, where are the houses that they're concerned about? Are they right there at where the Sylvia Lane comes into Gabriel Lane? Is that?
There was a driveway here. Where's the first number here? One Gabriel Lane had some water coming into their driveway before the road was paved. Finished course of pavement was put in, which I believe is done, and now there's a mound there preventing the water from Gabriel Lane from entering. So there was a little bit of a history of water there because of the incompleteness of Gabriel Lane. I believe that's been addressed, and in addition to that, the water from this new driveway will be captured by its own drainage system and sent the other way onto the subject property.
Okay, and a catch basin that discharges directly into the ground?
Yes,
okay.
Subsurface infiltration.
And the condominium documents would require the Sylvia Lane residents to maintain the catch basin?
Yes.
Okay.
Janet, you had a question?
I just wanted to mention about the stormwater issue that actually Mr. Beggs was in touch with me and I actually about the problem flooding his basement, and so I did get in touch, connect him with the town departments and also with George and Steve Steinberg, and they worked out a solution, and so far the solution has worked fairly well. It was a matter of the buildings uphill were still under construction, so the final stormwater management system hadn't been put in, but I just wanted to mention that they did move to address the issue and resolve it. As far as the road widening issue is concerned, that's been one suggestion about how to address it, but I mean, obviously there's some sort of discomfort for the residents who are going in and out. I honestly think that, I don't know what happened to the days when kids walked from the school bus stop to the houses, and, but I see it, all over the place, these cars waiting with the gas, the engines running for the kids to show up so that the kids don't have to walk, God forbid, 50 feet to the house. I mean, the way all of us did back in the days. We didn't walk 5 miles to school, but we rode on the buses and we walked, down the street to our homes. But maybe there's something, I don't know if there's some other solution besides widening the road that would sort of address the discomfort. I imagine that if it's an issue in the kind of weather we've been having lately, which has been non-existent winter, it could be bad if the snow on either side starts to encroach on the road surface. So I don't know if it's possible. There's an alternative to widening the road to make people who are driving in 2 different directions feel more comfortable, but I don't really know what the issue is there.
I think Steve alluded to it earlier, and that is by providing this new road, there's an opportunity to get some people more comfortable by turning here rather than stacking up here and going out onto 2A. So to some degree, I think we are making it better. But, and there's a flip side to widening too. Narrow roads keep people moving more slowly. So
that is very true. Yeah, when you have a road that, especially one that doesn't have sidewalks on it, you take the risk that the cars are going to fly down it, because they will. And especially if the drivers are on their cell phones not paying attention, which almost always they are, and I don't know what they're talking about, that's so important, but yeah, it's a hazard if you have a neighborhood with kids in it, so thank you.
Well, let's take another public comment, if you want to come up.
Just to add, the request for widening the road, and for everyone's understanding, see, when we were in the process of buying the house and even when we moved in, there was actually another road which is just adjacent to Gabriel Lane. And initially, for whatever reason, maybe misunderstanding on the part of myself and a couple of other people, folks were under the impression that the traffic was only moving in a single direction on this stretch of Gabriel Lane and then moving out from a separate stretch. Now, what really transpired since then is, and again, I'm not saying maybe it was a misunderstanding on the part of some residents, but when the office building was created and there wasn't that stretch to really exit out of Gabriel Lane, it just became a single entryway and exit way. So basically it became a two-way traffic. Since then, all the more, many residents have felt that it is a bit on the congested side. Now, I'm really not looking for Mr. Steinberg to, jump through multiple hoops, but I think our request was, there is a certain patch of land, just adjacent to Gabriel, where we have a side rail, and I don't even know what the legal challenges or, other could be. I think even widening the road by 1 feet could give just that little bit more space that when two cars are crossing by, it just gives that more confidence, that folks that the windscreens are, side mirrors are not going to bump into each other. And we've had, especially in winter weather, as you guys were mentioning, when there are snow mounds on the sides, some close calls. And that's why it was a request. Again, I don't know what I don't know. But I just wanted to highlight that on why, folks requested that. So, thank you.
Just want to come on now. Yeah.
So, I'm also part of the Gabriel Meadows, unit number 11.
Can you just say your name? I'm sorry.
Vikram Nagia,
okay,
unit 11, Gabriel Lane. So, I have only a question for Mr. Steinberg here. When you did the survey, you said one car going in and out. How did you come up with, so in the houses for 26 houses, you can only find one car going in and out per hour? Is that the assessment, or that was done within anybody from Gabriel Lane, you did it, or you just yourself? Somebody stood there and just looked at traffic coming in and out?
Well, my son stayed there 8 hours and counted every car coming in and when it came in and when it went out and how many times they crossed. And the results you have before you is very minimal. And people have been living there for almost 3 years, going on 3 years, with a lot of construction vehicles, which are now no longer there. And to my knowledge, there's been no accidents whatsoever.
Okay, thanks.
I like the narrow entrance because, as you pointed out, it keeps a small driveway, and it slows everybody down. Once you open it up, then they come roaring around there.
The reason I ask you that's fair enough, because right now, even during the winter time, I think somebody pointed out that it was such a harsh winter, even the snowplow can't even just go through with two cars together. And I had to practically stop my car, let it go first, because if I knew the two car cannot fit into that, and it's a close call, like Amit was saying earlier, and then we have kids coming from school at the same time. So just be kind of being mindful. I know there have been great things done at Meadows, but these things, little things probably, we're just not waiting for another accident to happen, that's it. So, thanks.
Thank you. Brandy,
I would, is there any way to make just a dirt, I know you can't, if you can't pave because of the thing, just make it more of a dirt edge?
There's a vertical granite curb there now, so you can't really get over the curb. If that wasn't there, then it would be mountable.
Because it seems to me that you can't speed very much there because you're either coming toward, either you just came off or you're about to stop to check on 2A. And it seems to me that if I were living there, I would be much more comfortable if it was wider. And, you don't want to get caught right when you exit a road and somebody might move in.
Yeah, the speed is the whipping around the corner thing, I think. But the plan, the Meadows permitting process did go through all its motions, and it was built to the plan, and there was an anticipation of a potential residential development here. As we mentioned earlier, there was an easement put over this portion of the road, so That was anticipated early on. I think it's sort of funny. If you ask the fire department, they'd probably like it to be, 40 feet wide. Everyone has their sort of bar. So I think, like Steve said, when the construction is entirely done, you'll fall asleep waiting for cars to come by, and the width has demonstrated to be adequate for even large trucks. So.
I was just thinking about the snowbanks. Just curious if you ever considered making it a loop, connecting up.
We considered very many things along the way, for sure.
Do you know what I mean? Making it like a rotary?
With
the law
the adjacent
office.
lot.
And, let's say you went in at Gabriel Lane and then you went left and then one way coming through the lots.
The grade separation makes it just about impossible. If you drive by and you see there's like a vertical cut in.
Oh, from the front to the, okay.
So we need this running room to get up to this higher elevation.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Okay.
Just the last comment, and again, just elaborating a bit more on, I think I agree that there is a granite, curb on the one side. I think our request really would have been that if there was any way to move the existing granite curb even a feet, that would have made a big difference. And I understand there are challenges. The biggest, at least personally, the challenge that I've had is when I'm coming in from Road 2A into Gabriel Lane, and sometimes when there are cars behind me, I'm trying to take a turn quickly so that I'm not getting hit by someone in the back. And in those cases, especially if there's a car coming in, then you almost have to stop and that's really where it becomes a bit challenging. So it's a practical, I was actually the first resident to move in, and it has become all the more, in winters, a bit of a concern. So again, not sure what can be done, but again, that's a request that if something could be done, they'll go a long way towards making residents comfortable. Thank you.
Is it possible to move it?
I think that...
Again, I think we would just reiterate the same things: permitting, hurdles, all of that stuff, and it's a vertical granite curb. There's a significant expense, but 1 foot, anything sounds like it'll be better, but I'm certain that people won't be satisfied with 1 foot. It won't make a measurable difference.
Okay, then I'm going to close the public hearing and we can have discussion, or if anybody would like to make a motion with conditions. Peter?
I think we need to vote to close the hearing.
Okay, why don't we vote to close the hearing? Can I have a motion?
I'll move we close the hearing.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. Peter, I think this is yours if you want to propose a motion.
I'm in favor of granting the special permit with conditions that the Gabriel Lane condominium, the Sylvia Lane condominium documents be changed to require that the easement include maintenance of snow and the maintenance of that lower end of Gabriel Lane there, I guess. And that signage be added. I guess I would propose as required by the planning department. And that the natural path be maintained or constructed, or whatever the word is, I guess, to the extent that it's feasible with the abutter and meets all permitting requirements.
Do you want to add about the 10-foot landscaping buffer?
Okay, I thought that was part of the new plan, but yeah, if that's not in the new plan, sure. You got to have the 10-foot landscaping buffer as required by the zoning bylaw between the residential and the commercial properties. The widening of the lane, I'm mean, I'm right now not convinced that first of all, we can do that. The Zoning Board of Appeals did issue the original comprehensive permit. I'm not sure we could require them to change it. That was a condition that was there when the homeowners purchased their property, so it was clearly a known condition. And I'm not sure widening it, minimally would make a big difference. So I'm hoping the signage would address some of the concerns, but I'm not right now, unless I hear something different, inclined to recommend that we require them to widen the lower end of Gabriel Lane.
Okay, so we have a motion with certain conditions. We have a second?
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, thank you very much, and thank you all for coming today as well.
Do I turn this off?
Why don't we do the consent agenda for the next 5 minutes? Okay, I will read through these, and if anybody would like to hold anything, please say hold. Number 7, Selectmen to support 2016 Acton Cleanup Day. Number 8, Committee appointment, Warren Richmond, full member, Historical Commission. Number 9, accept gift, Recreation Department, a gift totaling $1,000 from Emerson Hospital to support the 2016 Summer Concert Series and special events. Number 10, accept gift, Recreation Department, a gift totaling $1,000 from Northern Bank to support the 2016 Summer Concert Series and special events. Number 11, accept gift, Recreation Department, a gift totaling $2,500 from Roche Brothers Supermarket to support the 2016 Summer Concert Series and special events. Number 12, accept gift, Recreation Department, gift totaling $500 from Concord Tea Cakes to support production costs for the 2016 Summer Concert Series and special events. Number 13, accept gift, Recreation Department, a fiscal gift totaling $500 and $2,300 on product value from Dunkin' Donuts for the 2016 Winter Carnival. Number 14, accept gift, Recreation Department, a gift totaling $1,500 from Enterprise Bank to support the 2016 Summer Concert Series and special events. Number 15, accept gift, Recreation Department, a gift totaling $6,000 from Donlands Supermarket to support costs for the Independence Day fireworks display at Narra Park. Number 16, accept gift, Recreation Department, a gift totaling $2,000 from Sorrento's Pizza to support 2016 Summer Concert Series and events. Number 17, the Garden Club request for use of Red House for plant sale on May 21st, 2016. And number 18, request to dispose of obsolete items, Acton Memorial Library. And I just want to, note that this time of year we start seeing a lot of these, and to thank the very generous businesses in our area for donating to our Recreation Department activities, and also to Maura Haberman in the Recreation Department for working very hard to secure those donations every year. So thank you on both fronts. Can I have, hearing no holds, a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I'll move we accept the consent agenda items 7 through 18.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, I'm calling it close enough to 8:10. The Acton Board of Selectmen will hold a public hearing on February 22nd, 2016 at 8:10 p.m. in the Francis Faulkner Hearing Room in Town Hall on the application of Concord Municipal Light and Power for petition to install and maintain approximately 2,000 feet of concrete encased electric and telecommunication duct bank, including 3 manholes for cable splicing, along Knox Trail from the town line between the town of Concord and the town of Acton to, on, and through the property known as 37 Knox Trail. The application and accompanying plans can be inspected at Town Hall during normal business hours. Is there somebody here from Concord Municipal Light? Okay, great. Do you guys want to come up and introduce yourselves and what you are requesting?
Good evening. I'm Dave Wood. I'm the director of the light plant.
I'm Chris Roy. I'm the assistant director.
So Chris is going to present this. He's the project lead on this, so I'm going to let him take it over.
Sure. We, as you may or may not be aware from the background information, we're currently engaged in developing the former Concord portion of the W.R. Grace property for about a 5-megawatt solar facility. And a critical piece of the process is to interconnect the facility with the Concord Municipal Light Plant infrastructure. So we assess the various options to reach the property, and it is pretty close to an island. When you consider the residential areas and the river. We evaluated the option to use Knox Trail to access the property via number 37. And so what we're proposing here is to construct a standard duct bank to allow us to install cabling, express cabling from our substation on Forest Ridge, close to the town line, down to the former Grace property. And we wanted to make sure we did specifically note that it's both electric and telecommunications, because Concord does offer 100% broadband fiber optic service to the home for both businesses and residents. And so we thought it would be prudent if we were to excavate along Knox Trail that we also offer the option to provide a competitive source for broadband for the businesses along Knox Trail. We think that could, at least in Concord, it's been a great success to help at least stimulate competition and provide an option for businesses and residents alike to source their broadband needs. So we figured we'd also take that opportunity to provide that as an option to extend those to the businesses along Knox Trail, should it be desired. I think that pretty much covers the majority of the details. It's a standard construction. Just for a little history too, Concord has an undergrounding bylaw, so we do our undergrounding in-house. About 50% of the town is underground. This is a standard construction project that we do every year. We pride ourselves in in providing exceptional service that might not be your typical experience from investor-owned utilities that you might deal with on a regular basis. This certainly would fall under the same strict guidelines for our construction methods. I think with that, I can take any questions you may have.
Jen.
Yeah, this is actually a question from a resident. Did you, and I ran it by the town manager as well, and I got the answer, but I thought for the benefit of my colleague as well as the public, did you run this by, or did you get feedback from Eversource about the impact on Acton's franchise with Eversource? Because we're served by Eversource, and obviously we don't want to do something to encroach upon our obligation under that agreement. So.
Sure. When we looked at the option initially, we did consult our legal counsel to make sure there weren't twofold, to encroach upon the franchise agreement with Acton, but as well, not to go too far in the details, but the municipal light plant territories are closed territories, so all power for businesses and residents alike have to be sourced from Concord Light. So we wanted to be equally sure that we weren't opening our service territory for retail competition, which we're currently exempt from doing so at this time. And so legal counsel advised us that we would not be in violation of either of those situations. The noteworthy point being the parcel is in Concord, and basically in order to encroach upon another service territory at this time, you'd have to get the permission of the incumbent utility to provide those types of services. And so that conversation never took place, so there isn't any type of documentation to cover the service of Concord property via Eversource.
That's a great question. It's one of our biggest things we look at when we do projects like this. We want to protect our service territory, and that was one of the first questions we asked for that specific reason.
Okay, thank you, that's all.
Peter?
You talk about broadband, you don't sell a broadband, you do? You're a broadband provider? Okay.
We are a broadband provider. It would, 100% fiber optic, I guess, you could compare it to Fios. Yeah. But it's all totally different. It's, it's your community-based, you call up the office, you get on a bus, that type of thing. So it's purely Concord Light.
And how far are you back from the river here? Did you have to get a permit from the Conscom in Concord?
Indeed, we go to the planning board tomorrow, but we're outside of all buffer zones and critical habitats and all that.
And this is just going to be these will be on the ground basically, because at one point they were talking about school buses and maybe building them up high enough to park the school buses underneath. Is the town still planning to do school bus parking on this site?
School bus parking is still a proposition that's on the lower portion, independent of this project. So this would be the higher elevation areas of the parcel. Ground mounted arrays, to your point, but typical that you've seen, similar to what you've done on your landfill off of Route 2. It would be very similar. In this case, it wouldn't be ballasted. They're proposing that they're typical pillar construction. Yeah. Do you have to cut a lot of trees to clear the site? Yes. Most of that upper portion, I guess it's cut off on the map you have, but that would be tree clearing that were to be discussed tomorrow. Okay. Thank you.
Any questions? Okay. And yeah, similar to Peter, so this is just serving the proposed solar array, then it doesn't have anything to do with the bus depot, or would it be if the bus depot does come online, you would also be able to then?
It would end up feeding the bus depot because it's in a Concord parcel.
Right.
So we would have to provide it power.
Right.
And so if that does take place, then yes, we would use the facilities to interconnect to the bus depot as well.
But you wouldn't need to do any additional?
No, whenever we design a duct bank, we always design it for the future. Okay. As Chris mentioned, we're converting the entire town underground, so our engineers have extensive experience in planning for the future, and this includes that as well.
Good.
For a future Acton Municipal light plant, just throwing that out there.
Yeah, I worked for the state rep that pushed a lot for towns to be able to have their own municipal light after her service area included Unitil, and I think people recall the fun involved in that about 4 or 5 years ago, probably kind of 6 years ago at this point. Anyways, so yes, a lot of people are very jealous of the towns that do have their own municipal light and power. And do not have to deal with Eversource or Unitil or whoever. Okay, any other questions or comments? No. Can I have a motion, please? Somebody.
I move that we approve the duct bank, electric and telecommunication duct bank installation for Concord Municipal Light and Power at 37 Knox Trail.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, are you ready to do CPA study report? A couple minutes early?
Sure.
Sure, okay. Take it away, Peter.
Okay, I have the CPA Study Committee report here with an addendum of backup materials we gathered that support the committee's recommendations. Back in June, the Selectmen created the CPA Study Committee to study how the Community Preservation Act has functioned in Acton and make recommendations for possible changes going forward in the future. We had 10 members. Myself, I chaired the committee. Roland Borden from the Finance Committee. Walter Foster was a citizen-at-large member. Paula Goodwin from the Conservation Committee. Ken Segea Hughes from Acton Housing Authority, Carolyn Kilpatrick, another citizen at large who is a member of the Women's Club, Bill Clower from the Historical Commission, Corinna Roman Cruz from Acton Community Housing Corporation, and Bridget McIver-Matz from the Recreation Commission. We met with stakeholders who have been involved in community preservation projects over the 14 years, I guess, about now that Acton has been involved in the Community Preservation Act. It was first passed in 2002. We met with Nancy Tavernier from the ACHC, Peter Ashton and Susan Mitchell-Hart from the Open Space Committee, Tori Breyer from the Historical Commission, Tom Tidman from Natural Resources, Kathy Faulkner from Recreation. We also met with Brian McMullen, a town assessor and assistant finance director who is in charge of collecting the surcharge and granting abatements for people who are eligible. We looked at several possible changes after reviewing the history of funding, all of which is set forth in this report, and just, you know, the projects that have been put in place over the last 14 years. One thing we looked at was, it's called a blended CPA. Littleton is the only town in the state that has adopted that. They have what I understand to be a continuing stream of money through a cell tower account that they have in town. So the town, this involves committing outside funds to the CPA fund, which would then be eligible for the state match under the amendments that were passed in 2012 to the Community Preservation Act. So they commit this money from their cell tower account to the Community Preservation Fund in Littleton, and they're eligible for a higher state match based on the additional money. Our committee did not think that was a good idea. For one thing, in Littleton, I believe the town has said you have to use this money for open space projects only, so they're dictating to the Community Preservation Committee exactly what they could spend this money on. There were other issues. We looked at the ACHC's gift funds being added to the Community Preservation Act. That would restrict the ACHC and ability to spend that money right now. If they have a project they want to use their gift funds for, they come to us, we approve it, they can implement it. If it had to go through the whole CPA, it would be recommendation by the Community Preservation Committee and appropriation by town meeting, so it would be a much longer process. Also, it would be a one-time addition, so it would only be 1 year. We don't have that continuing stream of money. The town still has the possibility of, in the budget, committing every year additional money. That could always happen. Right now, town resources aren't there to do that, but that would be an option in the future anyway. So I, as chair of the committee, and because I will have to, as a selectman, recommend a possible warrant article or not recommend it in the future, I recuse myself from these votes, but that was a unanimous vote of the other members of the committee not to recommend a blended CPA. One town in the Commonwealth, Cambridge, has voted to increase the percentages that are required to be funded under the CPA, 10% historical resources, 10% community housing, and 10% open space. That's Cambridge. They've voted to require about 70%, I believe, of their CPA fund be spent for community housing in Cambridge, which is a huge issue there. We decided that was not a good idea. Again, myself abstaining, but the other committee members unanimously voted not to recommend that. You can always, first of all, it would again restrict the Community Preservation Committee from using their judgment about what above the 10%, how to distribute that among the various target areas. And we felt it might cause friction among the various target areas if that were put in place. So the committee did vote to recommend that the selectmen consider putting a warrant article on a future town meeting warrant to increase the surcharge in the community from 1.5% to 3%, and keep the current exemptions of exempting the first $100,000 of value of real property, and exempting residents who are eligible for affordable housing because of low income from paying the surcharge. That would increase the funds in the CPA account from year to year from the current, see if I can make sure I get about $1.7 million that the town collects each year. No, those are the exemptions. Hold on here. Okay, let me. Okay, going from 1.5%. Right now, the town collects $875,162 in surcharges at 1.5% of the value of real property minus the first $100,000. I'm in the addendum now, okay? And I'm go through the Community Preservation Coalition colored PowerPoint, and then there's a email from Stuart Saganor, the executive director of the CP Community Preservation Coalition. Then there are two charts after that. One is 2%, and the second one is 3%. So that's what I'm looking at. So currently we collect $875,162 in the local surcharge. The state round match, as our report indicates, and has happened over the years, is now about 29%. We started out at 100% back when there was, these are all funded, the state fund is generated by fees on filings at the Registry of Deeds. Back in 2002, there was a boom in building and refinancing and, housing. So the fund, and there weren't that many towns that initially jumped right in. So we received 100% the first few years. Now, as more and more towns have come in, it's down to 29% because there's not enough, and as the economy tanked, and there's not as many filings at the Registry of Deeds, we're down to 29%, and some of that is state budget money that legislators have agreed to add to the Community Preservation Act. So as more towns come in, if the economy doesn't improve and more filings generate more fees, or other changes in legislation might generate additional money somehow, that should keep going down. Boston is now talking, I think, in City Council in Boston about possibly joining the CPA. Menino was opposed to it. I think they had enough money in their affordable housing fund that they didn't need it. But who knows how the new mayor is in Boston on that issue and what the council's going to do about it. If Boston comes in, they'll suck up most of the money. So that's an issue. But right now, we get from the first round, so that 29% is $259,680. That's 29% of the surcharge we collect. We don't get anything from round 2 and round 3 because you have to be at 3% to get the other 2 pots of money under the statute. So the total revenue we now collect on a yearly basis is $1,134,842. That doesn't include interest on the account, which adds to it a little bit. If we go to 3%, the $1,134,842 would go to $2,317,981 for a difference of $1,183,000 in increased revenues each year to fund projects under the Community Preservation Act. That would be mostly generated by a doubling, obviously, of the local tax surcharge that residents pay. So the state match would go from $259 to $519. That would also get doubled. And then we would be eligible for about an additional $48,000 in rounds 2 and 3. It turns out that rounds 2 and 3 are geared really toward poorer communities and smaller towns to kind of even out how towns are treated in these funding rounds. Out of 10 deciles, I guess, as they rank the towns in, we are 9th because of our size and wealth. So we would get $48,000 in rounds 2 and 3. So the great majority of the increase would be generated, obviously, by the local taxpayers. We would double the state match. And who knows whether that's going to go down in the future or not, but that would clearly be additional revenue, and we would get some money from the second and third rounds under the way the statute works now. So I think the sense of the committee was that we clearly shouldn't recommend that a warrant article go into this town meeting's warrant. It's certainly not enough time to generate the kind of campaign that needs to be done to try to get support for this. This is an issue. I talked to Stuart Saginaw about this. There are very tight restrictions on elected officials or public employees' abilities to use public resources and lobby for ballot issues. We can clearly recommend budgets, lobby for issues that are on warrants, but ballot issues are different. There's an SJC case on this, and the Campaign and Political Finance Office has strict regulations on this about prohibiting use of public resources, or I believe even allowing or prohibiting public officials and employees from lobbying one way or the other for ballot initiatives. If we go to 3%, it requires, and this is in the statute, you got to first get town meeting in terms of the order, get town meeting approval, and then have an election. And I think Stuart's advice was where it's a double process like that, he thinks the Campaign and Political Finance Office would not allow public officials to lobby one way or the other for that particular issue. So, I mean, we clearly recommend a warrant article, but I don't think we could actively, and we would need more advice from town council on this, obviously, but this is more of a citizens, you have to set up a political action committee, I think, if you want to lobby for ballot initiatives, you know, file it with the state, talk about where you're getting your money and account for all that. So this is more of a citizens effort to generate the kind of political support that would be needed to pass this, not only at a town meeting, but at a ballot initiative. If we do have a fall town meeting before the national election, that might be a time when it would be more appropriate to put this on the town meeting warrant and then have this on the ballot in November. So I think that pretty much covers our work, and I'm certainly willing to answer any questions.
Okay, Janet. Peter, did you happen to calculate what the impact would be on your average Acton taxpayer? And they're the ones who are, because they're the ones who are paying this surcharge?
I think it was like $200. It had it in
right.
there.
That is in the PowerPoint that Stuart put together.
Is that for Acton? Is that okay?
Yeah, Acton CPA revenue.
Okay. No, that's all right. Now, I'm just looking,
right now it's about $123 a year for the average homeowner.
Yeah.
And it would double to $247.
Okay.
So
I mean, I honestly
that's clearly
think
a big impact.
Time aside to prepare for this, I think that frankly, there are some potentially big ticket items coming up on annual town meeting, and I don't know if people are going to have the appetite for this. I am a little bit sort of disappointed at the numbers, honestly, to go to 3%, and obviously yeah, we double our numbers because a big chunk of it would be coming out of the taxpayers' pockets. And then, you know, you get to rounds 2 and 3 and we get like peanuts, you know, it's just, the return is not that great for what we're putting in. And then to begin with the match, I mean, some people could say, what, but you're getting, you know, you're getting a 30% return on which you can't get somewhere else, but that's, you know, $900,000 that I'm sure we could find other uses for other than CPA projects. And I mean, I understand the support for it because, yeah, there are things that people are able to do with CPA funds, and that's precisely the function, is it's to do stuff that typically towns haven't been able to do because they haven't been able to set aside the money for it. But yeah, I think 3% is something that I think people need to process, have a little more time to process and think about. So thanks, though, for all the work.
Yeah, I will say that if you look at the addendum, each one of the interest groups pointed out areas that they could fund that they haven't been able to fund if they had additional resources in the CPA, particularly open space, obviously a huge issue, and they detail, the Open Space Committee details their priorities for, land that might become available that we could use additional resources to purchase, and recreation, which has not been able to be funded for a lot of their priorities under the town budget, could use additional resources to fund recreation projects. So there was one thing where the Recreation Committee representative to our committee, the CPA Study Committee, voted against raising the rate to 3% for the surcharge. But I just got an email today that the entire Recreation Committee considered the issue, and although Bridget Matz, who was on our committee, wasn't present at that meeting, the other members of the Recreation Commission voted to support an increase to 3%. So.
Franny?
Yeah, is there any way that we could somehow protect some of the older citizens who on fixed incomes from this?
You know, the only report I have on that is from anecdotal stuff. Brian McMullen says that people who come in for abatements, and I'm not sure this was senior citizens versus non-senior lower income residents, come in for abatements of their normal real estate tax because they can't pay the real estate tax, don't apply for the abatement from the CPA because they like the project, they like the program so much that they say, well, I'm willing to pay for that. So that's the only anecdotal. We did have Carolyn Kilpatrick, is a member of the Women's Club. She's been around for many, many years in town and plugged into the, a lot of the seniors, and she was a very supportive member of our committee. So,
because that was just a concern. I like the idea of taking in more, but I like to protect people from increased taxes who struggle with it. I'm fine with this. There are just two things. One thing, I didn't quite understand what round 1, 2, and 3 mean. Is it a time?
No, it's a percentage of the total funds that the state has to give out each year. They give out 80% in the first round, and then they reserve 20% and dole that out in the second and third round, something like that. Those numbers might not be accurate, but that's the concept. Okay. And also, looking at the map of which towns do it, in a way, it's the rich getting richer. The state matches the towns that have CPA, and it seems to be the wealthier towns that do it. It made me want to do something like adopt a town. It looked like about half the towns in Massachusetts have it, and if we're letting, it's like U.S. and Mexico, if we're letting these other towns, buildings and open space, degrade, why don't we set something up? I know that's not for our town, it's more for the state, but it was sort of thought-provoking when you look at that map. I don't know if the CPA statewide has thought about a way to help the towns that don't want to do it because it would be a burden on their taxpayers.
I think part of the idea is that if you want state money, they want you to pony up some money as well. And so, I mean, well, Hudson actually does have the CPA, but there are towns that have very different priorities for a number of reasons, and some towns don't place a value particularly on preserving open space and other things for, again, a variety of issues. And so, like you said, it's not really for Acton to decide that for them. But I had two questions, Peter. The 10-10-10 split, is that a part of the state requirement, or is that just?
Yes,
Okay,
it is.
but you could vote to change it
You
if
can,
you wanted
yeah.
to. Okay, but that's the, and then on the timeline, I think you answered this, but so you have to go to town meeting first prior to going to?
That's correct. I'm told from Roland that that's in the statute, and I'm assuming that's accurate. That's Prop 2.5 doesn't say what order you have to go in, so some towns do the election first and then
Right.
town meeting afterwards, and some towns do town meeting first and the election afterwards, but I'm told that the CPA statute requires town meeting vote first and then the ballot election.
Okay, yeah, because obviously timing of our election is prior to town meeting. We're not talking about this year, but future year. But perhaps something like a fall town meeting. Have you guys considered doing, now that you've put together this report, I think as starting to shop it around or gain support or not for it, doing a public hearing? I would say maybe just a general public hearing, and then potentially also one specifically at the senior center to get feedback from people that, I think tend to be on fixed income.
Actually, we didn't talk about that at all. I considered personally, and didn't talk to the committee about this either, our work was done when we finished with this report. Yeah. But I think that's a good idea. I can, poll the committee and see if we should get back together and do some public meetings to inform people about what we did and what we recommended.
Yeah, and just get some general feedback. And then if a citizens group, hopefully out of the people that participated in this, formed to support it, I think that would make sense. Good. Any other questions? Questions or comments from the audience? Walter?
Good evening. Thank you very much. So I just wanted to take a few moments to make some comments. First is to commend this board for its leadership in establishing the committee. As many of you know, I actually did help serve on the first committee that adopted the CPA, and it's been, I think, an incredibly successful program, largely through its citizens and town government working together, and we've seen the fruits of that. I specifically want to thank Peter because heading up any of these subcommittees takes a lot of time, so it's a very thankless job, but thank you all for that, and particularly Peter for your time. On a couple of issues, as both a member of the committee, but as a citizen of Jesse Drive, this to me is one of the best programs that this town has had the foresight to both adopt and use in, I think, a very specific way, largely to preserve our open space and character, but at the same time, really have the historical piece there and the affordable housing and outreach that speaks very highly of who we are as a community. I think of the Half Moon Hill project and the preservation of that wonderful land up there and many other projects that have benefited from this. Couple of just comments to follow up because I think it's worth it even to share this is one of the larger audiences, hopefully it gets taped, but we'd be happy to bring it on the road, and I'd certainly be happy to.
I hope the audience is larger.
Well, TV, right? So I'm hoping. But on one thing, on the 10-10-10, one of the major reasons why I think the committee, and of course Peter can correct me, didn't go beyond to what the statute required is it affects your bonding ability. So to us, where, as you know, the town decided to do one of the projects bonding, in fact, it was the Half Moon Hill one, and the ability to act that quickly and to access those kind of funds were critical. And so the committee, I think, as a whole, felt that you didn't want to compromise that by increasing a certain dedicated percentage. So I just wanted to share that. And to Franny's point, I'm sorry, Chair, Selectwoman Osmond, particularly about affordability, what we did learn through Stuart Saginaw is there's a number of communities out west that, in fact, because they are at the full percent, get a huge match. In fact, it's almost reversed. Sometimes they're making up about 30% of what is their full budget of their CPA funds because they are either both so small or have very low income. So I did want to, I think, correct a misperception that this is at all a rich person's program or town. There are many cities and towns that have really found a way to benefit through this statewide, and about half are on board. So for a couple of reasons, I really would like you to strongly urge, it's about $10 more a month per tax holder. And we do have the exemptions for affordability that has a deep impact on not only our senior citizens, but anybody on an affordability, regardless of where your age is. But the priority about purchasing open space has been very, very clear in this town. And what we know and what the committee heard was a literally laundry list of potential purchases that would be critical to maintaining kind of the standard of, if you will, what we've gotten used to as a wonderful community. And those far exceed $2 to $3 to $4 million in the near term. Without some type of substantial increase, we would very quickly reach not only our bonding limit, but the full limit, and we would again see what happened before the CPA came in, which is properties going under the developer's shovel, if you will, without the ability for us to act. And I would also add that because of its success and its, I think, measured fairness within the interest groups for the last 13 years, the other message has gotten out very clear to anybody who's coming to develop land in Acton that the town is actually a very serious player to purchase these properties. And I don't think that should be given up. So both as a citizen, but as a dedicated, I guess, public servant in the past and serving currently on CPA as that by way of disclosure, I think that you would see and enable a lot of the desires and goals of our citizens. And it was astounding when Brian came to the committee and said that there are a number of folks who, when they need to apply for the abatements, were saying that no, they want to actually pay the CPA surcharge. One, because it's really not that big as a percentage of your larger tax bill. It's really not. But it speaks to me very highly about what that leveraging is. And if you can point me to another program that brings in 10 cents to every taxpayer dollar or 20 cents to every taxpayer dollar, let alone 40 cents potentially for your taxpayer dollar, please, let's sign up for that program too. I don't see a better kind of leverage program. And the other piece is that Stuart Saginaw did share with us that there is legislation in the offing to make a guaranteed 70% state funding. That's like anything else. Will Boston get in? Will they not? What effect will that have? Will that legislation happen? But there's a growing momentum within the cities and towns to look at that legislation, and there's lots of political support. So if you're in at the 3%, you would not only benefit from the additional rounds, but if ever that legislation passed, you would literally see a doubling of the state match for us. So I think for all of those reasons, and I would commend that both with the dialogue with the citizens at large, that you continue that dialogue, that at your earliest opportunity, as best as you see fit, is to try to adopt this, pass it for the warrant. And I think the citizens who are very concerned about and have really spoken with their feet on this program will come forth to help pass this and do the necessary citizens work. But we do need our Board of Selectmen to step up to the plate and put this on the warrant, and I strongly urge you to do so. Thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you, Walter. And we'll just echo our thanks to Peter and the rest of the committee for all. It was quite extensive, the work that you guys did when I read the addendum, so appreciate it.
Let me make one request. If we're going to go out and educate the community about what our work has been, what the CPA has done in the town in the past, and what possibilities there are in the future, I just want to be very careful with town council about exactly what our limits are, and I'd like to know up front rather than farther down the road, you know, what we can do and can't do. I mean, I'm assuming that's perfectly fine. We wouldn't be lobbying one way or the other necessarily. We'd just be giving out information. But if I could request that town council give us some kind of an opinion about what our restrictions are as public officials in this area, that would be helpful. Thank you.
I think Steve's meeting with them tomorrow, so maybe we can add it in. Okay, well, thank you, and obviously we'll keep talking about this. As you said, I don't think it's ready for annual town meeting, but, you know, keep talking about it and see where we are in a few months or so. Excellent. Okay, number 5, ALG update. You want to take that? You want me to take that? You want to do that in conjunction with?
Let's talk about the ALG update first, and I'll kick it off, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong.
Sure.
You have in front of you tonight the kind of the cover spreadsheet that was presented at the last ALG meeting, which was a week ago.
Thursday?
Tuesday?
2 weeks ago from this Thursday.
2 weeks ago, yes, tomorrow.
Oh, no, no, oh, right, yeah, we went on Tuesday.
It was on a Tuesday, it wasn't a Thursday, right.
You're right.
Under the column, it says projection FY17, and this will look pretty familiar to you. It called for a use of town reserves of $2.692 million. What had changed from the last spreadsheet you had seen was the Acton-Boxborough Regional School District assessment of $55,547,000 is actually what the school committee has voted. They lowered their assessment by the anticipated savings in health insurance, anticipating that the health insurance trust will vote a 4% increase, I think this coming Friday. So what this bottom line did was it showed that a net position of about $292,000, $300,000 for rounding was left if $2,692,000 were to be utilized. At that meeting, the finance...
And Steve, I want to note that this also includes, there was kind of funding from the previous ALG, and that we applied that towards lowering the use of the unused tax levy,
right,
and therefore lowering the tax rate. So
right. Right. At that meeting, the Finance Committee representatives stated that they would only support a scenario that utilized $1 million in free cash. I think reduced the tax levy by $500,000, and therefore about $1 million would necessitate about $1.3 million in cuts between the town and the school. So at that point, we were all directed that we'd go back and talk to our respective boards. So, Katie, I don't know if you or Peter want to add any more to that.
No, so just the $1.3 million cut came, again, because of that, we had applied sort of more of this net position from the previous time to the unused tax levy, and based on the FinCom's recommendation, they were only saying to kind of not recapture $500,000 of that, and we had applied a little bit more, so it would be using that, would be actually lowering that a bit, and then applying this $300,000 to reducing the town reserves, and that left about another $1.3 million to get down to $1 million only $1 million in reserves. And so they were initially requesting essentially a $1.3 million cut between the proposed town and school budgets. I think both the representatives from Peter and I, and then the representatives from the school committee, balked at that for a number of reasons. One, it would be a very large cut to both of our budgets fairly late in the game, you know, and B, again, I think from our side, we were feeling like we are coming in at under a 3%, you know, budget increase over last year, which is within the FinCom's point of view. And I'm not sure, we weren't really sure where we'd be finding all of this extra money to cut out of the budget. So we'd kind of left it at our uncomfort level with that. We said to take it back to FinCom, you know, to take those concerns back to FinCom. And subsequently, I will say that I had to miss it because we had our rescheduled meeting on Thursday, but the school committee did have their public budget hearing and voted their assessment number, which is this $55 0.547, and have sent that to us. So I'm not sure that they even will change this at all at this point. And that's a bit of where we are.
No, I probably at this point, I've got a kind of a PowerPoint to remind everybody where we're at, but before I get into that, it's probably important to note that at some point towards the end of last week, the chair received an email from the chair of the Finance Committee that in essence offered that if the town cut $200,000 from their budget, in essence, we could move forward and bring closure to the budget. And then at some point later on in the week, the offer was kind of taken off the table. So part of my presentation tonight was about $200,000 and where we could conceivably cut $200,000 from the budget. So that is kind of an issue that's up in the air with Finance Committee. I guess they're going to be talking about it tonight, and presumably, obviously, we'll be talking about it more Thursday with ALG. So we're a little unclear where we're at with that, but you know, maybe I should walk through this presentation just to get a sense of the board, whether they want to offer a $200,000 cut going into ALG, or just see how ALG progresses on Thursday. So.
And just a bit about the 200 number, I think part of it is, so when the schools in town both heard that the health insurance rate would likely be 4%, not 8%, as we talked about at our last meeting, we kind of rolled that money back into our budget to be able to support the senior center funds, whereas the school committee actually ended up reducing their assessment by that amount, and so there was some kind of talk about whether we should look at cutting that. It's actually closer to $125,000 rather than $200,000, but there had been this kind of idea floated from FinCom that maybe they would be supportive of both of the budgets if we cut $200,000 out of it, but it doesn't sound like that's necessarily on the table, but we wanted people to understand what cutting $200,000 out of the budget would mean. So this is... Okay, so
back on February 1st, the board voted a total spending package of $32,856,604 to Finance Committee, and that included both operational budget, subsidies to some enterprise funds, capital, and a borrowing proposal. And that, as Katie had mentioned, was a 2.82% increase from 16. This is kind of how it breaks out. The operational budget, $32,242,000, subsidies of $247,000, and capital of $367,055. This kind of shows the increases. It was a 2.46% in operational budget. Subsidies have gone down primarily because there's no general fund subsidy to the ambulance fund. OPEB increased to $600,000, and capital had a big increase because we didn't really do much in 16. These are the subsidies that were recommended in the budget, $245,000 to transportation. Once again, no general fund support to ambulance this year, and $2,000 to the Cultural Council. And the capital that was recommended was $60,000 for bike lane rail trail study to see how to connect somehow the two rail trails. The senior center, and you may recall, the senior center cost was $300,000. We looked at a couple of our gift accounts between some Selectmen discretionary funds from the Concord Muse project and a gift account from Audubon Hill. We identified about $175,000 that we could put towards the senior center design, leaving a balance of $125,000 of budget money. We had painting town hall of $162,000, and then interest cost of a bond at $20,000. And the $20,000 for interest.
Can I ask you a question back on that last slide? I'm confused because I thought we funded the whole $300,000 with the senior center. I thought we.
Well, we're taking our two gift accounts, Peter. That's what we talked about on February 1st.
I thought we used. Then I thought we made up the difference with the reduction in health insurance.
That's what the 125 is.
Oh, that's the 125.
Right.
Okay.
Right. That was what the savings was. So the bond issue is first-year financing for Kelly's Corner at $756,000 and $90,000 for the a portion of the landscaping of at the train station. Just also, we had union contracts. There are 2 union contracts that would be coming to the annual town meeting, that being the patrol unit that represents 33 officers. That has been settled. Be going to a town meeting. We'll be making a presentation to the Finance Committee on that tomorrow night, as well as the dispatch unit with 12 employees represented by the Teamsters. That will also be going, presenting to the Finance Committee tomorrow night. The other superiors and the AFSCME Highway Municipal Property were dealt with at the Fall Town Meeting. And Fire, we've just started, we've had 2 sessions, and that is at a different contract term, FY17 to FY19, so really would not be expecting that to come to this town meeting.
And Steve, those contract settlements, that's already factored into your budget. That money is
correct. We taken out of the FY16 budget.
Right.
Correct.
Oh, out of the 2016. Oh, okay.
Right. Right. These are capital that'll be in the budget that are from other sources. Inspection of vehicle from food service, a tractor replacement from the transfer station, capital machinery for sewer. A look at the traffic flow at Prospect and Main out of Chapter 90, a utility truck out of Chapter 90, doing some bonding of the Parker Street Bridge from Chapter 90, completing the streetlight project from the Energy Efficiency Fund, and South Acton Communal Landscaping, $90,000 coming out of the parking lot fund. And I realize that the landscaping is still kind of in flux, and we may be coming back with a different proposal in the near future, as I understand it. And as we talked about OPEB. We've been doing very well with OPEB. This is kind of the arc that shows that at a contribution rate of about 600,000, that by 2035 will be pretty much resolved with our OPEB situation. However, as we kind of talked, there are some challenges ahead. We talked about just a little while ago, looking at the spreadsheet, that the ALG plan uses 2.7 million in reserves. We talked about a 200,000 proposed ALG compromise. The regional school, as we mentioned, has cut 293,000 in terms of health insurance. And if we hypothetically look at cutting the town budget by 200,000, these are some things we could think about. Obviously, there's 3 big factors in the budget. There's capital, there's the operational budget, and OPEB. We spent a lot of time, our budget team, on Thursday going through the budgets, thinking about what could we do to cut 200,000. One would be to not do the town hall painting. Another would be to reduce OPEB. One would be to eliminate Sunday hours at the library. One would be to remove the bike lane study, and one would be to put off the senior center design. So we get several scenarios, and we'll show it a little more graphically, but one scenario would be to reduce or to eliminate the painting of the town hall and reduce the bike lane study. It's a little more than 200,000, but you can't paint 1/3 of town hall or whatever. The second would be to reduce OPEB by 108,000, reduce or eliminate Sunday library hours at 32,000, remove the 60,000 for the bike lane study. Option 3 would be taking it all out of OPEB. Option 4 would be 140,000 out of OPEB and 60,000 the bike lane study. Option 5 would be the 125,000 for the senior center design and 75,000 for OPEB. So this kind of shows it a little more graphically to get a better sense, and we'll go back to that in a second. But as we talked about it, our recommendation, the staff recommendation, would be option 1, not to paint town hall, put that off another year, and put the bike lane study off, because obviously the construction of the 2 bike paths are just starting. So I guess, Katie, the discussion would be how we do, is this something we want to put on the table at ALG, or do we wait and see what the ALG discussion is? I guess just to get a general sense from the board of what everybody's opinion is.
Okay, thanks, Steve. Yep, so as Steve mentioned, I think at this point, there's a lot of open questions, and so because we're going to ALG on Thursday, we'd like to get a sense of how people feel about the 200,000 cut in general, and then I don't think we're going to recommend voting any option at this point, but a sense of what options people would like. And again, part of this is to just demonstrate what cutting $200,000 would mean. So we understand if we are supporting that at ALG, you know, that it's going to likely be one of these options. And again, I think part of the reason for not recommending it tonight is that there are some things still in flux, the senior center and a few other things as well. So, but just to understand generally what cutting $200,000 means, do people want to go forward and say at ALG that we're willing to do that, or not, essentially.
So maybe I missed this earlier, but how much are the schools offering to
So
cut?
the schools already cut their budget by $293,000.
Are they offering any additional cuts in addition to the 200K? Or?
So the reason that sort of this number came up, and again, where we are, is that the health insurance trust, both the town and the schools originally were budgeting for about an 8% increase in health insurance. And when we found out it's likely that the health insurance trust is going to vote for a 4%.
We're voting on Friday.
You're voting on Friday, okay. And it's very likely going to be a 4%. To the towns, that meant $125,000 cut. We didn't actually cut that out of our budget at all. We just kind of rolled the costs in there to fund the senior center in a different way. Whereas the schools, it's a $293,000 reduction, and they actually use that to reduce their budget. And so the sense that we've been getting from the finance committee is that they are comfortable with the school budgets because they made that cut. Although they're not, they would like to see us make a similar cut. Again, it's actually $125,000 from us. We thought there would be potentially a deal at $200,000. Although it sounds like that's not necessarily on the table anymore. So even if we do agree this $200,000 cut, I don't know if that means we will have agreement at ALG, but that's sort of where we initially got the number from.
So yeah, I was wondering what I probably just missed the exact framework. I know I heard the deal with the $200,000 cut is now off the table, or sort of not directly on the table, but is sort of in flux. What was the other side of that deal, Steve? I'm sorry, I just missed it when you said it the first time.
It's that FinCom would support. It's that we would have agreement at ALG that FinCom would support our budgets.
But they wouldn't support it if we cut the $125,000 that we initially rolled back.
So,
I mean, is that?
No, we don't know.
That didn't come up?
No, and part of it was that their recommendation was that we cut $200,000 in this year and reduce the town reserves by that much, as well as the sort of 293 net position right now. And then they wanted to see in the out years in FY18 and 19 that we put 1.3 million in for the use of town reserves. The problem is that current ALGs cannot bind future ALGs, so that's not really a realistic thing to do, but.
And so I was just, I mean, like, you know, obviously reducing the tax burden on residents and you know, is a good thing. So if we can, you know, hold budgets down, you know, and hopefully that would be good. But I don't understand why we aren't thinking about the option of, like the schools, just cutting the 125,000 instead of the full 200. You know, that was the increase in the health insurance that we're getting back essentially. I just was curious as far as why that's not an option.
It is, and it's part of what the discussion is tonight. And then just to make clear, the likely scenario about what ALG would agree to would not actually lower the tax burden, because the sense is that people would want to apply it to the reduction in the use of town reserves for this year. So it wouldn't actually lower the, just to be clear, would not actually lower the burden on the taxpayer.
I mean, having more town reserves potentially lowers tax burden in future years. I mean, at the end of the day, it's spending less taxpayer money, which is always a good thing, so.
And I think, and probably one of the confusions is the compromise option was floated to Katie probably on a Wednesday. We spent all day Thursday looking at 200,000, but after we made this presentation, the 200,000 was off the table. So, it never was about 125 with the initial thing that was floated.
Right, and again, I mean, the timing on all of these are very tricky, because we're obviously meeting tonight, FinCom's meeting tomorrow night, and ALG's not meeting until Thursday, so it's sort of, and people can't and shouldn't be talking in a quorum outside of the meeting about what people would or wouldn't support. So, we just want to understand what to bring back to ALG from this board. So, Peter?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, following up with Chin's son, if the FinCom is satisfied with the $300,000 cut by the school committee, considering that the school committee spends 2/3 of the budget and we spend 1/3 of the budget, it would seem to me that they ought to be satisfied with a $100,000 cut in the town budget. I also would point out that this current ALG plan, I'm assuming the ALG is going to vote to take that 292 and put it back to the tax levy. So that brings it down from 4% to 3.8, I think.
I actually think that the sense was that people would want to apply it to reducing the town reserves at this point.
Okay.
At least from FinCom, that's very much what they would recommend. And in fact, that number would probably go up a little, because we had applied more of that 600 or whatever it was, thousand, than they were. They were actually saying only to use 500 towards a reduction in the unused levy.
It looks like it's at 4% then, but a couple of these warrant things are in flux. If we don't, I don't know where the senior study committee is. They're talking, I'm hearing about leasing a piece of property, and I don't know if even the study would go forward if that happens. That frees up 120,000.
Well, one of the complexities, and we're talking to town council about it, Katie and I met with, I think, 3 of the members of this study committee Thursday morning. Is they would like a warrant article that would be kind of flexible. So it'd have to, 125, 300,000, but either to be utilized for a preliminary study for a senior center or to move forward on a lease. And they would like to actually put an RFP out on the street to see what kind of interest a lease would generate. I guess, and I should let everybody know, because I received an email late this afternoon from the senior center director that the chair of the senior center had talked to somebody in the local real estate business that felt that retrofitting a leased property might cost like $800,000. So if that's the case, $300,000 is kind of, at this point,
So that's, again, why
meaningless.
We're saying a lot of these numbers are in flux, and why we wouldn't want to take a vote necessarily on any of these options tonight, but it's a sense of if people want to move forward, would want to move forward with any of them. Janet.
Yeah, I'm comfortable with, offering something at ALG. I mean, I don't know what, as you say, you don't know what the consensus is going to be on Thursday, because we don't know where FinCom is going to be tomorrow. I'll go to that meeting tomorrow. But, I mean, whether it's 125 or 200,000 and reducing the use of reserves, I think that, FinCom has been pretty up in arms about this issue, and I'm fine. And I'm also, as I told Steve Ledoux, I'm fine with the out-year modifications, because the out-years always look awful. I mean, you look at any of the out-years, they mean nothing, because they always show an enormous deficit, and the presumption is that you're going to use an enormous amount of reserves, and then every year we start budget planning for the following year and those numbers don't pan out at all. I mean, it's just never sort of as horrible. And that's part of, I think, the skepticism, accounts for the skepticism that's existed at ALG when people are, when FinCom was talking about making these cuts is I think one of the AB people said, every year there's this talk about this, and every year we're back with the same, replenishment of reserves and, all that sort of thing, and then anyhow. But I'm fine with doing something this year, and whether it's those things, I have some opinions about the senior center item, but I will hold it until later, only because I think that the fact that there's so much confusion about what is going to happen means that, frankly, you should pull it off the table. I don't think you should inflict that kind of chaos on town meeting, and especially the alternatives, because, well, certainly the leasing option hasn't even been explored fully. So, I don't think it can be on the table in time for annual town meeting in a sensible way. And I think that even the building project has weaknesses. It just. I just don't understand why, that there hasn't, this is my position though. I mean, I still have issues with it because I see big holes in the data that keep getting presented over and over again. And I'm thinking, okay, you're in the assumptions that are supporting the idea that you need a much bigger senior center, but the data is not there to persuade me. So, I'm not unsympathetic to people who use it, but I just think that has sort of been the project, the item in our budget that has kind of loomed large. The other thing I would add is that I have gotten some feedback, which I shared with everybody, about the town hall colors. And I honestly don't know who's got the right to decide what color town hall should be, but I know that they're supposed to be historically correct colors, but I know that there are some people in town who have opinions about the historically correct colors, pro and con, and so I'm wondering if maybe, for that reason, it's a good idea to hold off and maybe see if we can get some more feedback from people about whether they're going to just be distraught if we change the building to historically correct colors after all these years. So, but I'm fine with the proposal to just...
So would you like us to bring back, and we'll get a sense from everybody, but are you comfortable with us bringing to ALG that we'd be willing to cut 200,000? 125, some other number?
I mean, 125 seems more equitable, but we had talked initially. Initially in the proposal it was 200, and it would be helpful to know what they were thinking about when they said 200, because 125 seems to be more parallel to the school committee's 292K. So if we're looking for parallelism, that would be fair, but if it has to be 200, there needs to be some explanation of what that's supposed to represent. Or is it just to combine with 300,000 from the school side equals 500 and it's a nice even number? I don't know. So that's all.
Okay. Franny?
I'm fine actually with 200,000, and I came to the same conclusion that the staff did, that the best solution was the town hall, and what was the other? The bike lane, because of the timing, and yeah, I just thought that was the best idea, and I'm satisfied going with that. I do want to note that the senior center actually, this morning at the senior center study committee, we voted to move forward with leasing of the specific, putting out an RFP. But the specific spot that we have, that we're looking at, is a building on Post Office Square, which is very doable, and compared to building, it will be very reasonable. So we were never coming to this town meeting to get all of the money to build, and in the same way, we wouldn't be coming to this town meeting to get all of the money to lease, but what we would be doing is getting some money for putting out an RFP, permission to put out an RFP, and initial design money for building out whatever place was chosen.
Okay, we might get slightly off topic, but so you're saying the whole focus will be on leasing now and not?
Yes.
Okay, because that's not the way Katie and I understood it at the meeting we had last Thursday. So that would bring a little clarity, a little more clarity to what we're doing, okay?
Yes, as opposed to...
Well, the way it was explained to us on Thursday was the ability to go either way, to either lease or to do the preliminary design like that was always been discussed in building a new building, so.
Oh, that's right, yeah, no, we decided we wanted to go through with that and not look at, for example, the Main Street site, or, I mean, where were you thinking?
So it's just going through lease is all you were talking about?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
All right. Okay, that makes it a little easier. Okay.
Is that, I'm looking toward Charlie to make sure he understood it the same way. He was at the same meeting.
My understanding.
You should go there, actually. Sorry to put you on the spot. I just wanted to make sure I wasn't relaying.
My understanding was that they wanted to explore the lease option, and there's always a potential that that wouldn't work, and then go back and re-examine some of the other options. But for the Mo, I think the emphasis is on the lease option.
Okay, so...
The only other point I wanted to make is that, you know, this is the time of the year that's very stressful and a lot of anxiety, but the thing with the ALG process is kind of everybody gives a little, I mean, you know, and so yeah, 125 might be equitable, but if it takes 200 to bring closure so everybody's in agreement going to town meeting, you know, I think that's something we need to consider.
Sure. I think philosophically, I always hate looking at us as separate things, school, town, you know, so when we take different amounts from school and town, I don't think we have to divide up like that. It's not
Sure,
like
although again, we'll point out that the school's assessment is increasing 4.5% over last year. Our assessment's currently increasing 2.8%, nope, 2% over last, or no, 2.8% over last year. So I think that's great, but I don't think that we are ever going into this exactly equitably anyway. So I think there's a bit of a feeling sometimes that we're being asked to take more and more of cuts when we're, again, 1/3 of the overall budget, and our budget's going up significantly less than the school's assessment. So
I guess we're all the same people.
Sure. Of course, taxpayers think that, but I mean, on ALG, and if you're dealing with a budget, you inevitably look at the two entities and you know, calculate things like increase. It's a little, yeah, a little competition going on about, well, we're only increasing so much percent, and why are you increasing so much? You know, it's inevitable. It's a big deal for the entities. It's not for the taxpayer. It gets the same bill. It doesn't matter. But yeah, it's a big deal between us. So.
And again, I don't think it's just about competition, but when we're looking at the impact on the taxpayer, the bigger impact comes from an assessment that's going up 4.5% versus a much smaller municipal budget that's going up less than 3%. So I think there can be frustration when you're being asked to take a larger cut than sort of is, I'm not going to say fair, but again, I think perhaps, okay, so perhaps the sense I'm getting, and that Peter and I can bring back on Thursday, is that people feel that $125,000 in cuts would make sense to keep it in line with the 293 cut from the schools, but that if there is an agreement at 200,000, that people would be willing to do that, and we can figure out where the money comes from at our next meeting.
I just want to note that the Transportation Advisory Committee really thinks, I sort of forgot to bring that to the board this month. I will for the next meeting. We are willing to take on that whole biking thing. And so the question of where we're going to make a connection between the two bike trails is something that even without funding we could at least start by sort of building up the Transportation Advisory Committee in terms of biking members and looking at that. So
great.
Even if it was cut out of the budget, it could still be pursued.
Okay, great. Okay. Our last item is to Selectmen take position on warrant articles. We have sort of initial layout of what will likely be the articles on this year's warrant. We're not obviously in a position to take a position on most of these, but since we'll be doing the bulk of that at our next meeting, we thought it might be a good idea to get some of the smaller ones.
And also, I mean, this isn't necessarily in any particular order. That's kind of in our traditional order, but if anybody's got some thoughts, maybe we can certainly talk about it on March 7th. I think one of the challenges is going to be Kelly's Corner and the capital for Kelly's Corner, because my understanding from talking to Roland is that if the zoning doesn't pass, then the $756,000 appropriation should move forward. So, you know, it could be that we keep the Kelly's Corner capital kind of in the usual place in the warrant, but have the motion that it's contingent on the passage of the zoning articles or something like that. But is that the sense you get, Peter, that we need?
Yeah, I think we should think about pulling it out of the capital articles and linking it with the zoning thing. I mean, if the reason Roland says that you got to pull the capital if the zoning doesn't go through, the state's not going to fund the infrastructure improvements if we don't do the zoning, because it's all connected to smart growth ideas and all of that. So there's no sense in doing the design if you're not going to get the additional $9 million from the state to fund the work. And it's all part of the same presentation. I mean, it's all part of the same, the zoning and the capital improvements are all part of the same presentation. I'd also think we should think very hard about what kind of priority we give it at town meeting, whether it's it gets moved up to the first night somehow, or we somehow try to make sure that it goes first on the second night. It deserves to be a priority at town meeting and not the usual kind of zoning thing that winds up on the third night when, you know, there's half the people there.
So it sounds like, at least for our own kind of laying out of the warrant, that E, which is where it would be usually in the warrant article, capital infrastructure and equipment, then maybe we just have a separate capital article for bonding for that would put it right after amending the zoning bylaw and zoning map for Kelly's Corner, that we just kind of break that out and do it
Yeah,
separately.
and if the zoning bylaw doesn't pass, you just pass it by. That'd be my recommendation. I mean, I think that's,
yeah, I think
been the liaison to the committee and talked to Ann Chang a lot about this. That's, you know,
I think the bigger question is going to be when to do it. You know, if we do it, because people tend to prefer having the big spending articles on the first night, but
well, for instance,
do we do it then, or do we do it as a first?
Yeah, no, I would move it up
night?
before the community preservation stuff. I mean, I think it's a high, you know, I understand community preservation is an important article, but so is this. So I would, and that might be the first item on the second night. So.
Senior Center Study Committee was hoping that would be first on the second night because seniors don't want to be out late.
All right.
I mean, can we just put Kelly's Corner and all that other stuff early and, or some more time early on the first night then? Or
well, so
right
we do our
the
town operating budget and we do the school assessment
and then we do Kelly's
first.
And then we do Kelly's Corner.
We could, but that's fairly late in the night.
The Senior Center Study Committee is part of the budget, right? So
we need permission to go put out an RFP. We need
for the lease.
So where is that under capital?
Well, at this point, it would be, yeah, it's Senior Center Design. See, because when we wrote this up, we weren't sure. You know, we didn't necessarily know this lease thing was
so you're up there on the first night.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, not bonding. Okay.
It's not bonding, no.
Right.
I mean, if you're going to do an RFP for a lease over 10 years, you got to have a separate vote.
Well, we got authorization to go more than 3 years, correct?
Yeah,
yes.
Okay.
All right, we'll play around with the order on it, and I will also, prior to next meeting, do a initial pass at assigning warrant articles to people, and then we can finally approve that at the 7th, but I'll kind of do an initial suggestion. Okay, so ones we thought we could take a position on tonight would be some of the consent items, because they're really not controversial. So Steve, do you want to, which ones do we think we can do?
Well, we traditionally have most of the enterprise budgets as consent. You know, and you've seen all their budgets. Also, the last one's the highway reimbursement, Chapter 90, the authorization to spend any insurance proceeds we get, the authorization to spend any gifts or grants, and any federal and state reimbursement, and the ability to spend performance bonds if we reclaim them, and the ability to sell foreclosed properties. I mean, those are all standard every year, and you know, easily do.
I'll move we recommend ZE through CJ.
Do you also want to do, okay, why don't we do those first? Okay, we've got a motion to recommend warrant article, well, what is written right now is warrant article ZE through ZJ.
Second.
Okay.
I think like the planning board, I think, is having their public hearings on the zoning this Thursday, I believe.
Wait, we haven't taken a vote on that yet, Steve.
Pardon?
I just want to take a vote on this recommendation.
Right, okay,
first.
sure.
Yes, sir. Okay. All right. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? So do you also want to do K through R?
Sure, I'll recommend
I'll
move that we recommend Articles K through R on the consent warrant agenda.
Second.
Okay, any questions?
I have a question.
Sure.
Why is transportation called a fund as opposed to a budget? Is that on purpose, or is that?
Transportation is an enterprise fund.
Okay, I mean, there's an enterprise budget, and there's an enterprise budget, and there's an enterprise fund. Are they different things?
It's all in an enterprise fund.
No, she's saying, so like L is sewer enterprise budget, Y is O transportation enterprise fund.
Why is
Actually, it should be enterprise fund for sewer.
Should be all be fund.
Sorry.
And what about septage and recycling? Everywhere where it says budget, should they be fund?
Should be fund.
But again, this isn't how it's going to be printed
Right.
in the warrant, it's just.
I was just curious if there was significance, but I guess there's not.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second on recommending warrant articles that are currently listed as K through R. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, and you had something else you wanted to say, Steve?
The rest outside of the collective bargain agreements, which, as I said, at the last meeting I reported, we settled with police and dispatch at the same terms we did with the ones we brought back in the fall. The amounts listed here would be come out of the FY16 budget, would not be an FY17. I mean, the board could do that, or we could give a little more detail on the 7th. It's up to you. And we are presenting the detail to FinCom tomorrow night.
Yeah, I'd like to see a little more detail.
Okay. Wait on those ones.
That's fine. The rest, I think, pretty much, need to wait till the 7th.
Yeah, I agree.
Where's the Minuteman building project, or you haven't added it yet, or is it lumped in somewhere?
It's H.
Authorized debt issuance.
Oh, there it is, okay. I didn't.
We don't have language yet. Kevin is supposed to be sending that to us.
Okay.
What's the latest update on that? Have all the districts voted now?
They're voting
Towns?
the remaining towns are
tonight.
voting this week, tomorrow, and Wednesday.
Yeah, I think a bunch were tonight.
And there is tonight, yeah.
And they've all voted to go with the new agreement?
Yeah, so far, they all have. It'll be interesting to see Boxborough's on the 24th, and their chairman, the chairman of the Board of Selectmen, is pretty gung-ho on withdrawing, and there were all these letters in the Beacon saying, no, don't do it, including the Minuteman rep for Boxborough, who says, and Beacon took a position, had an editorial saying, it's probably better to stay in. So we'll see if their town meeting agrees or not, but they're in a different position because they have a small enrollment, so. But yeah, 3 towns have voted to withdraw.
Yes, right.
Back on these things. Since we're sort of up in the air, I was talking to Steve before about the Open Space Committee voted to get another appraisal of land on School Street, on Piper Lane. I wondered if we could have a placeholder for now until we determine for that potential.
You could, but at this point, I highly doubt we're going to have an appraisal by town meeting, because I never heard of it till you told me tonight, so I've made no arrangements.
I assumed that Tom would have talked to you. I don't know what happened after that meeting. I guess I don't know the process that maybe I was supposed to.
The process is usually the chair of the committee lets me know. So.
Okay.
What's the Conant Street?
Oh.
Conant Street's actually a gift. It's kind of some backland on Conant Street.
The wetlands. I thought we took it. I thought we accepted it like 5 years ago or 10 years. Last time I was on the board.
I don't think we followed through with it because Tom sent us a reminder that we needed to have it on this warrant.
Okay.
So I don't know.
I mean, we can talk about it obviously later, but it's possible that it's a shorter term thing, the appraisal, because there's not much changes from last time. In the possibility that it would go through, would it hurt to have a placeholder? And then we can determine within the next week or before the next meeting?
Sure, we'll put something on to talk about it the 7th. I mean, we're not setting the warrant tonight, so it's fine. And if there's more information by the 7th, then let's talk about it then. And if there's not, then let's recognize that it's not going to happen by town meeting.
Okay.
Okay.
So when are we closing the warrant? The next meeting?
Yeah. Okay, and actually I had a question from the chair of the regional school committee about whether or not they needed to come present their budget. And my sense was I've provided some updates in my reports, and that I think unless they wanted to specifically come and do a presentation, then I would just ask them to send kind of one of the superintendent's most recent PowerPoint presentations. We'll put that in our packet, and then there can be somebody here from the school committee that can answer questions, unless people are diametrically opposed to that.
That's fine.
Okay. Okay, so we will work on this and have some more, much more to do on the 7th. All right, and then just selectmen's reports again, just a reminder to some people to do your selectmen reports. And that those should get to Lisa by the Thursday before our meetings. Okay, although, can I have a motion to adjourn, please?
So moved. Second.
All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions?